Welcome to the audio file on using self-study guides to support implementation fidelity. This audio file informs interested parties about the role of self-study guides in helping educators ensure strong implementation of new interventions and reflect on current practices in implementing a specific academic practice, multi-tiered system of support, or response to intervention framework. While the examples shared here are centered on evidence-based practices in implementing literacy interventions in elementary and middle school and academic interventions in high school, the notion of self-study applies to supporting literacy or academic interventions in any subject area or grade level. I'm Nathan Archer, the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast Multimedia Specialist. This audio file will consist of a question and answer format featuring Mr. Kevin Smith, who will answer questions about the value of self-study guides. Mr. Smith is currently the Alliance Manager of the Florida Career Readiness Research Alliance at the REL Southeast at Florida State University. He is also the task lead for training, coaching, and technical support activities for the REL Southeast. He is formerly the Deputy and Acting Director of the Just Read Florida office at the Florida Department of Education, or FDOE, where he provided extensive technical support to schools and districts across the state. Prior to joining the FDOE, Mr. Smith was a middle and high school literacy coach and teacher of English, journalism, technology, and reading intervention. Mr. Smith, thank you for answering questions about using self-study guides to support implementation fidelity. The REL Southeast has produced several self-study guides for practitioners. Can you tell us about self-study guides?
Self-study guides for implementation are tools designed to help districts and schools gather baseline information to use in developing an implementation plan for evidence-based literacy or academic interventions. The guides help teams of educators such as teachers, instructional coaches, school counselors, and administrators prioritize their needs as they develop or refine their implementation plan for interventions. The guide offers guiding questions and possible sources of evidence so that teams can gather progress monitoring information for continuous improvement and evaluate the implementation of the interventions. There are currently self-study guides to help educators plan for and implement literacy interventions in grades K2, 3-8, 9-12, and summer reading camps. The self-study guide for interventions in grades 9-12 also includes mathematics interventions.
What does the self-study process look like in the elementary school setting?
Self-study is designed to promote reflection about current strengths and challenges in planning or implementation, spark conversations among staff, and identify areas for improvement. It's helpful to elicit input from participating teachers and others who deliver literacy or academic interventions, in addition to instructional coaches and school-based administrators. In an elementary school setting, there's a focus on ensuring that students are identified for intervention early on, using valid and reliable assessments, and scheduled and placed into instruction that will help meet their needs as soon as possible. There are evidence-based instructional strategies and materials to ensure that students receive the appropriate catch-up instruction that will get them back on track with their peers. It is important that their time in intervention is strategic and intense, and that teachers have an opportunity to work one-on-one or with small groups to ensure that each student's needs are met.
Middle and high schools are usually structured quite differently than elementary schools. How would using a self-study guide in these settings be similar or different when compared to the elementary school setting?
The important areas to consider for interventions at the middle and high school level are similar to elementary school. There is still a need to consider the assessments used for placement, scheduling, instructional materials, teacher quality and support, classroom environment, and communication. The most significant differences probably relate to scheduling and student needs. In secondary schools, most students have multiple subject area teachers and electives. It's important to consider how to ensure that students still receive all of the other instructional components needed when they're scheduled in an intervention. In addition, the range of student needs for intervention grows as students get older. Rather than focusing on some of the same instructional practices for most students, students may have vastly different needs. For example, those still needing to focus on foundational reading skills to those with reading skills that may be close to proficiency but have a lack of necessary vocabulary knowledge or the ability to understand nuances within complex texts.
For districts or schools already implementing a specific academic practice, multi-tiered system of support, or response to intervention framework, how might self-study guides be helpful?
The self-study guides provide evidence-based support for stakeholders as they make a multitude of decisions for intervention implementation. For example, how to select students to receive intervention, choosing intervention content, and scheduling time for interventions. Whether an intervention is being newly implemented or has been implemented for years, the self-study guides can play a supportive role. Specifically, scoring guide areas embedded within the self-study guides can help guide and support fidelity of implementation. Implementation of a new process can take a full school year or more to be successful. Therefore, implementation fidelity is critical, not only in the planning phase of implementation, but also as it's carried out over a period of time to ensure continuous improvement. When using evidence-based practices, it's critical to consider that generalization may only occur if the intervention or practice is carried out with fidelity to the model studied. This means that considerations made for how school and classroom practices align with the recommendations from research. The annotated bibliography at the end of the guides help educators focus on the supporting evidence from each area and why it may be important to implement with fidelity.
With each new school year, students' needs may change. As well, schools welcome new students and potentially new teachers. How does this present a challenge in maintaining implementation fidelity once a literacy or academic intervention has been implemented? And how does self-study help address those challenges?
That's an excellent point. With teacher and principal turnover at schools along with student mobility, one school year may look very different from the next. Changes in faculty and staff can lead to a loss of institutional knowledge of how things can work well, and also important components of implementation. In addition, each group of students bring various needs that will need to be addressed. Since self-study is intended to provide a continuous framework for improvement, bringing in new members as part of the self-study team is actually helpful, whether they may be new to the school or just new to the team. The idea of self-study is that educators with various perspectives come together to discuss each of the components with their unique and valuable insights. Having new members to the team can help broaden understanding of what may be working well and infuse the process with new ideas for implementation. The consistent framework of guiding questions and possible sources of evidence provides a level of continuity within the process and in alignment with evidence-based practices.
Your work with the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast has afforded you the opportunity to interact with stakeholders at the state, district, and school level across the Southeast states. Can you provide us with specific examples of how school districts or schools have used self-study guides to support implementation fidelity?
The REL Southeast trained school leaders and teams throughout Mississippi to use the Summer Reading Camp self-study guide for planning their first ever third grade summer reading camps. Districts and schools shared how helpful the tool was for planning and subsequent implementation. The state has seen great increases in literacy rates on their state outcome assessments and NAEP, and has thanked the REL Southeast for supporting these efforts. District staff in Seminole County Public Schools, Florida, discussed the benefits of using the self-study process and establishing and reviewing intervention implementation procedures in secondary schools. The South Carolina Department of Education partnered with the REL Southeast to train over 800 educators throughout the state in summer of 2019 on the Early Literacy Intervention Self-Study Guide as part of the Palmetto Literacy Project.
Those examples are very encouraging and highlight the value of the self-study guides. As you mentioned before, there are currently self-study guides available for implementing literacy interventions in grade K2 and 3-8, as well as for summer reading camps and high school academic interventions. Based on your work with the REL Southeast, do you see a need for self-study guides to support other areas? If so, what areas would they focus on?
We've had great response from our partners, stakeholders, and alliance members on the helpfulness of our self-study guides. Based on additional requests, we are currently finalizing self-study guides on literacy interventions in adult education, career counseling in secondary schools, and instructional coaching. Each of these should be available in the next year or so.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for this helpful discussion on the use of self-study guides in the elementary, middle, and high school settings. It's encouraging to hear that the success of the currently available self-study guides has paved the way for additional self-study guides to be developed for an even further reach across stakeholders. We hope that listeners have been informed and encouraged to use self-study guides to support implementation of evidence-based literacy or academic interventions within their own schools or districts.